December 1944, Le Glos, Belgium. Picture this scene in your mind. It is no ordinary junkyard scattered with metal scraps. Before you sit the legendary King Tigers' 75 tons of German engineering, the terrifying apex of Third Reich armored might. Yet here they rest, pristine, fully armed, and utterly abandoned. On that fateful day, the 1st SS Panzer Division, Hitler's personal bodyguard, did the unthinkable. They opened the hatches of their impervious machines, climbed out, and fled. Left behind were 135 armored vehicles, each worth a fortune by today's standards, and 5,000 elite soldiers forced to trudge on foot through freezing forests, leaving their wounded comrades and the pride of the Reich to sink slowly into the mud. What shattered this mechanical juggernaut? It wasn't a massive bombing raid. It wasn't a secret unit of American super tanks. The German war machine began to crumble because of a single, simple, trick-a 50-cent coil of hemp rope, an idea so audacious and so dangerously clever, it wasn't even in the field manuals. This is the story of the daisy chain, how a band of desperate engineers and construction workers outwitted the most advanced army on the planet and transformed the Battle of the Bulge into a nightmarish traffic jam. Dear friends, if this video has reached you, it's not by chance. Right now, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. Write a number from 1 to 5 in the comments. I will personally respond to the first 50 comments and make sure to watch the video until the end. To appreciate the genius of this weapon, you must first understand the environment they faced. December in the Ardennes was not merely cold, it was lethal. Temperatures hovered around 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground, hardened into stone-like ice, mocked every attempt to dig or tunnel. And it was this frozen nightmare that terrorized Lieutenant Colonel David Pergrin and the men of the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion. These were not frontline killers. They were builders, men accustomed to bulldozers, cranes, and the slow, meticulous work of fixing bridges or repairing roads. Yet intelligence reported Joachim Peiper barreling toward them, the SS poster boy of cruelty, commanding a seemingly endless column of tanks. His mission? Speed. The Meuse River had to be crossed within 24 hours, or the Allied front would be split. Fuel was his lifeblood, momentum his very breath, and should he stop, Germany's fate would be sealed. Pergrin knew conventional wisdom. To stop a tank column, you bury mines in a checkerboard pattern and wait. But when the engineers hit the frozen roads near Stavelot, reality struck them with a cruel hammer. Shovels clanged against rock-hard ice, pickaxes bounced with each swing, sending shocks through their bones. The earth was impenetrable. Panic began to creep in. They could hear the growl of Maybach engines drawing closer. The German steel leviathans approached, and yet their explosives were useless. They could not bury them. If left on the surface, they would be easily avoided. Desperation, however, breeds invention. Somewhere in a command tent or a frozen foxhole, a question arose. Not about strategy, but about mechanics. If we cannot hide the mines under the road, why not beside it? Ridiculous, dangerous. But it made sense. A mine on the road is visible. A mine in a ditch is useless. But what if the mine could move? The engineers began experimenting. M1A1 mines, 6 pounds of TNT encased in steel, were strung together with hemp rope and telephone wire, forming chains of 4 or 5 mines, spaced carefully along the rope. When dragged across the snow, they resembled a dark, ominous necklace, a daisy chain. The plan was audacious. The chain would be concealed in snow-filled ditches or behind rubble, and a soldier, crouched in a nearby foxhole, would yank it under the tracks of an approaching tank at the precise moment. But consider what this meant. This was not simply laying a trap, it was a duel. An American soldier would have to let a Panther, a machine designed to kill, roll within spitting distance of his face. He would have to remain perfectly still, as the earth shuddered beneath him and enemy exhaust fumes filled the air. It was a deadly game of chicken against 45 tons of steel. Unaware of this improvisation, Joachim Peiper's column moved arrogantly. To the Germans, Americans were soft, overly reliant on air support and artillery. The SS were masters of armored warfare, equipped with the finest tanks, optics, and crews. Peiper's pioneers, mine detectors in hand, methodically swept the road ahead. The snow appeared pristine, unbroken. Their instruments stayed flat. Road clear. All ahead full. What they could not see was the lethal surprise lurking in the snow-laden ditch, a frozen American gripping a rope with white-knuckled determination, waiting for the perfect moment to rewrite the rules of engagement. The stage was set, the technological might of the Third Reich versus the stubborn, clever ingenuity of the American working class. It was the morning of December 18th. Visibility was near zero, fog thick enough to bite, and yet, you could hear them. The high-pitched whine of Maybach engines, the bone-jarring crunch of steel treads on frozen asphalt. Behind a ruined stone wall, a sergeant of the 291st gripped the end of a hemp rope, his hands numb, his adrenaline roaring in his veins. Through the mist, the Lid Panther emerged. 45 tons of sloped armor, a long 75mm gun scanning for targets, flanked by alert infantry. The German pioneers swept the road in front of it, oblivious to the deadly trap hiding just out of sight. They waved the tank forward. Its engine roared, gears grinding, and history waited with bated breath. The tank lumbers forward, every tread chewing the icy road with unstoppable force, eager to conquer the narrow bridge ahead. And there he waits, the American sergeant, eyes locked on the advancing behemoth. 30 yards, 20, 10. The frozen ground quakes beneath the weight of the metal monster. He lets out a sharp cry. Now! With every ounce of strength, he yanks the rope. In an instant, a deadly black line shoots from the ditch, sliding across the ice like a living serpent. It finds its mark in the path of the Panther. The German driver slams the brakes, but physics is unyielding. 45 tons on ice do not halt at a command. The explosion doesn't merely roar, it punches, rattling ribs and eardrums alike. Its mission isn't to obliterate the turret, only to cripple. Steel track links shatter. The drive sprocket bursts apart. The Panther swings violently, skidding sideways, grinding to a helpless stop, blocking the narrow road like a colossal, immovable door. Inside, the crew reels, ears ringing, hearts pounding. Outside, the world erupts in chaos. Yet the true victory is already achieved. This predator of the Ardennes has become nothing more than a metal monument, a 45-ton tombstone in the middle of the road. The Ardennes terrain is merciless. Roads wind through steep banks, leaving no room for maneuver. The tanks behind cannot pass. They cannot retreat. Miles of armored vehicles, fuel trucks, and ammunition carriers slam to a halt, bumper to bumper, as the daisy chain transforms from a physical weapon into a psychological terror. Peiper might eventually push through, but each delay is catastrophic, each halt a crack in the carefully timed blitzkrieg. German commanders are bewildered. Their reconnaissance suggests a clear path. Mines? Impossible. Yet the invisible threat gnaws at their minds. Every snowdrift, every stray piece of debris, every shadow on the roadside becomes a potential trap. American engineers, reading their fear like an open book, escalate the illusion. Phantom mines appear. Sometimes a rope, nothing attached. Sometimes a few dinner plates dragged across the road. And it works. Panic spreads. Entire panzer columns grind to a stop over a rope, over a scrap of string. Time Peiper's most precious commodity bleeds away, while his men cower in imagined danger. Engines roar, but movement is impossible. A King Tiger consumes hundreds of gallons of fuel per 100 miles, but even idle, it drinks relentlessly. Batteries must remain charged. Crews must not freeze. Every hour wasted in hesitation consumes the very fuel that might have carried Peiper's men to the sea. 18 hours are lost. 18 hours of paralysis. 18 hours where the unstoppable blitzkrieg crashes to a halt. Then, the weather shifts. Winter fog lifts. Blue sky stretches above. Allied fighter bombers, P-47 Thunderbolts, dive upon the immobile column like circling vultures. No searching required. The Germans are lined up, exposed, trapped between fear and frost. Peiper, once confident in his brute force, realizes the cruel truth. He is not defeated by tanks or artillery, but by fuel, road, and time. On Christmas Eve at La Glaise, the end comes. Surrounded, out of fuel, out of options, Peiper orders the unthinkable. Radios destroyed, guns sabotaged, tanks abandoned. In the silent night, 800 surviving soldiers wrap their boots in rags to muffle their footsteps on the snow and vanish into the Ardennes forest, retracing their steps home to Germany. Behind them lies a treasure of war. 135 armored vehicles, cutting-edge weaponry, now nothing but frozen, useless scrap enough to equip 2 full armored divisions, now a monument to hubris and failure. History often remembers the generals, the tanks, the bombs. But in the frozen forests of 1944, the tide turned thanks to the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion. They demonstrated a timeless truth of warfare. The most dangerous weapon is not always the largest. Sometimes, it is a 50-cent rope, a few pounds of explosives, and the patience of a soldier willing to wait until the whites of the enemy's eyes are visible before striking. The daisy chain was the forebear of modern asymmetric warfare, the ancestor of the IEDs that haunt battlefields today. The lesson endures. Ingenuity can triumph over technology. Once again, David defeated Goliath, not with a stone, but with a rope. And you? If you were crouched in that icy ditch, 45 tons of steel hurtling toward you, would you have the courage to wait for the perfect moment? If you've enjoyed this tale of ingenuity and grit, show your support, hit like, subscribe to Fireline, and ring the bell for more untold stories of war. Share in the comments which improvised weapons of World War II you want explored next. I'm your host for Fireline, and I'll see you on the next front line.